welcome today. I'm here with Andrew MacIntyre, or Big Mac as I call him. He's an incredible guy. I met him during lockdown. We had lots of conversations. We stayed in touch, and I love what he's doing. So this is just to let you know how much I love what he's doing, and to tap in to what I think is an incredible guy doing incredible things. So thanks for joining us today, Mac.
Thank you very much, mate. What a lovely introduction. Although
Well,
you did miss out the bit where you originally contacted me when I was in a hospital bed, and I had no way of getting away from you.
well, that's the best way. You know, if you're going to do your marketing, you have to get it when people can't. They've got nothing else. They've got no excuse not to be there. So it's true. I did find out that that Mac was in hospital when I connected with him originally, and he was going in to have some quite serious surgery. So I decided that I'd phone him up when he was stuck in a side room waiting, like pretty serious surgery, and just take the piss out of him a little bit. Friends for life. But on a business side, and I mean, it really can't, I can't emphasize enough, you know, why is Mac here? Well, because every time I speak to him, I end up coming off the phone or not, you know, we've met up as well. And I just feel good, you know, our conversations are usually upbeat and positive, and he's doing some incredible stuff in the blockchain and the artistic space. So I just want to start off, and you've just written a book, Mac, you know, tell us a little bit about that, The Clansmen. It sounds interesting. What was the inspiration? Tell us where did that come from?
This was a weird one. I had this idea some years ago. A lot of ideas you get and you jump on them straight away. And this one came to me quite a few years ago. And I wrote a screenplay for it originally. And the way it came to me was I was researching my family tree at the time. And separately, I was watching television. And one of these antiques programs came on, and they had the object that they were looking at was a ram's head. And this ram's head, obviously stuffed or something, and you could take the top off of the skull, and it was a snuff box, the full ram's head, and round these sharp horns coming out, and round the outside was this silver chain with little trinkets and little shovels, and they used to use it apparently to take snuff. And so I thought, well, that's a really interesting object, and it just stuck with me. And while I was researching my family tree at the same time, everyone wants to be connected or an ancestor that owns half of Gloucestershire or something like that, and you're going to find yourself rich. And I went the other way. I thought, what if you found out that your family history and your family tree, and they were like murderous villains, and you really didn't.
Which is probably more likely given the history.
And so I literally put the two items together, and I created this story of a guy who doesn't even know he's related to the people who are after him. And he's a very successful international architect, and he lives on the River Thames. His office studio is in the bottom of the building. His penthouse is obviously on the top. And there's a few random murders, or you think they're random at the beginning of the book, and then he returns home, as in 13 floors up, to find his wife and his twin brother brutally murdered. And he has no idea what's going on, obviously, and the police take him in, and then you find that some terrorist, anti-terrorist officers come to see him because they think there's some connection. Excuse me, and when the terrorist officers try to move him to a safe location, their car is blown up. And so this chaos and bedlam ensues. And the rest of the story is this adventure where he's with an agent, and they're trying to figure out what on earth's going on, why are people after him? And it stems from this clan in Scotland that date back hundreds, if not thousands of years, but now they're running a massive crime syndicate and this and that and the other. And so it's about this guy's life being turned upside down. So it's one of my favorite sort of scenarios, and an ordinary person in extraordinary circumstances. And he's got to figure out what on earth's going on and try and solve it. And so that's how it came about.
Fantastic. So in digging in your own family tree, what were the most interesting things that you found? Oh, you weren't ready for that one, were you?
I tell you what I found. First of all, there was supposedly a MacIntyre on the Titanic, which there was. I found him. And I managed to make contact with his grandson or great grandson. I can't remember how many generations. And he was a stoker down in the engine room, stoking coal into the boilers and all the rest of it. And he survived. There's one thing wrong with it, and that was he wasn't called MacIntyre. He changed his name about 3 days before he got on the ship because he was running away from something. So you find these fascinating stories. There's nothing to do with me in the end, but it was just a fascinating story to find out. And what you generally find when you're tracing your family tree is how wrong your existing living family have got it. They have all these folklore stories about uncles and aunties and great grandparents, and you find out that most of them, I'd say 70%, are not true. And it's amazing when you look at the facts. So we thought someone in my family was French. They weren't French at all. They were foreign, but they were something like Dutch. And there's quite major things they get wrong. And these stories get embellished or exaggerated, passed down the generations. And because your parents or your grandparents are telling you these things, you naturally believe them. And then when you look at the facts, they're not true at all. So my family, they were Scottish originally. And it's from a chap who came down to work on something called Sugarloaf Mountain. And this was a long time ago. And he was a stonemason. And so they needed specialist people in those days. I mean, this is a few hundred years ago, I think. So he came all the way down from Scotland and ended up in South Wales. And that's where my whole family came from. So I live in Wales, but with a Scottish surname. And we've got our own tartan and everything. But it's absolutely fascinating when you're tracing your family tree. Fascinating.
Oh, for sure, for sure. So would you say, because I mean, I had an interesting experience, the same, like when you track it back far enough, you start finding that you've got connections all over the globe. And I guess with the UK, because we're probably one of the most invaded islands over the last couple of thousand years, well, not the last 1,000 years, but the 1,000 years before that. I mean, it was just invasion after invasion after invasion. So it sort of makes sense that we are quite multicultural if you draw back far enough. So, I mean, yeah. Obviously you found links in Scotland, you found links in Wales. Did you go any further back and find a bigger multinational pan out of your tree at all?
Not further back. The Scottish is good history to follow because there's a lot more documents because you can trace them back a lot further with the clans, and the heraldry and all this sort of stuff. No, I found I only got as far as Europe, really. It was mainly England, Wales. They're from all over the 4 countries of the British Isles, Irish and Scottish. And I think that our surname is spelled M-C-I-N-T-Y-R-E, but that's actually the Irish way of spelling it. They've got the A somewhere along the line. So somewhere there should be an A back in there. And then it was down in England, south of England, Dorset way and things like this. And I found out that one guy was a carriage driver, which doesn't sound very glamorous now, but at the time that was quite a decent profession to have. How much further further after? It wasn't so much going back; it was coming forwards. A lot of them then emigrated, obviously. A lot of the Irish and the Scottish left the British Isles to go to America and Canada. So I have a lot of relatives over there that are quite easily, you can track them down with these various software and companies that are out there now. So I must do the next step, which is the DNA test, where you do the swab, because that's fascinating. When you find out that you come from Azerbaijan or something originally, it's amazing. And I know a few people have done that, and I must do it myself because it's the next step. But, for me, it led to this book. And it was literally, I was just tracing my family tree, and I swapped it around a bit in my head and thought, well, if I'm not going to be related to a prince, then it would be the other end of the scale.
You couldn't do the Danny Dyer. You're not connected to royalty or anything like that.
I wish. So I thought, well, what if, it was a crime syndicate, a murderous family, clan, all this sort of stuff. And then it gave me the idea for this book, which I originally, as I said, turned into a screenplay. But I'm much more into writing novels lately. And so I sat down with my screenplay and turned it into a novel, or a novella, to be correct. and so it's just coming out now. And I've was doing an interview on it the other day, so it'll be on Amazon. I have a deal with a company in Sweden that much prefer to do the audiobook side of things, which I love. I love listening to audiobooks myself. So to have this is my second book with them, it'll be on audiobook. And then that's on all the normal platforms like Amazon and Audible and so forth. So it's quite a journey. It's great. It's good fun.
And you've entirely self-published this, haven't you?
Well, on Amazon, yes, but with the company in Sweden, that's a contract I have with them. So they are publishers, but they prefer to do the audiobooks, not the written format.
Yeah.
And I'm not quite sure why they specialize in that. So I'm up there with their list of clients with some J-list celebrities.
The Swedish Premier League. Right.
Paris Hilton is one of their clients, and remember Samantha Fox years ago. I don't know what book
I think most men will probably remember that of our generation, Mac. Right?
Maybe her books are pop up one, I don't know. But so there's some, a lot of people are writing books now. I think it's become more popular again. It's come around again. And audio books are still very popular, obviously.
Absolutely. So for people out there that have got no idea about self-publishing, or that it just seems completely overwhelming, what would you say to them about the process?
Very interesting question. It's the process, if you have any IT nous whatsoever, is relatively easy. However, it's like anything else in life, and especially with what you do for a living, helping people launch their businesses and so forth. Marketing of it is imperative, because to self-publish a book is relatively easy, and then you find you're sat on a proverbial Amazon shelf with about 2 million other books. So trying to get someone to find your book in amongst all of those, and most of the other books are pretty good, is fairly difficult. And so you have to then spend the money or utilize anything you can, like we're doing now, and make an interview and put it out there as content, because driving the audience to your book is more difficult than any other part of it. You write your manuscript, if it's any good, I would always suggest giving it to people to read, whether it's friends and family, but you need people that are going to give you honest feedback, not just someone that says, oh, wow, Adam, this is great. You really need to get some honest feedback, and then do a few drafts of that until you've got a really good manuscript. And even then, there's ways of formatting that manuscript that people like Amazon prefer. So it's not just about taking some raw text and throwing it up there. And the other thing is to get a really good book cover, because whether we like it or not, as human beings, we're hugely influenced by visual images and things like this. And so it could be the best story in the world inside, but if your cover is bad or boring or plain or whatever, no one's going to look at it. So it's amazing, even as intelligent human beings, if you're literally looking at a book cover and think, oh, I'd love to read that, from one image. Yeah. So it really needs to grab the reader. And I did it, my first book, Magon, was had a particularly good cover, and it was from a photographer in Eastern Europe. And I teamed up with him and said, can I use one of your photographs? Because it gripped the person straight away, the customer straight away. And it really summed up what the book was all about. Even though we worked separately, it was incredible. And so he gave permission to use his photograph, and every person said, wow, 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 look at this cover, I've got to read this. So that's powerful as well.
Fantastic. Well, having been on that journey myself, I would say it's definitely got easier over the years now with self-publishing, Amazon.
Yeah.
I guess from my perspective, your feedback is exactly right. You've got to get people to help you and give you an objective opinion. Otherwise, you're just going to surround yourself by people. Oh, it's brilliant! It's brilliant! It's brilliant! Right to the point when there's zero sales at the end of it. So, yeah, that's fantastic.
I also noticed that writing for other people doesn't work. So, trying to write for an audience, you're always going to get it 50% wrong, at least.
Yeah.
So some people tend to think, oh, what's the latest subject that's fashionable? I'll write about that. or any type of influence from an external audience that means you write differently, never going to work. You need to write the story that you want to write. You need to write it the way that you want it written. And you need to be brave enough to stick with it, because the downside to showing it to people to read is that if you show it to 10 people, you get 10 different opinions. So what I do is I show it to 2 or 3 trusted people that read a lot of books, and they will give me honest feedback, and I might make some slight alterations. But some people have said, oh, I don't like that bit, you should take it out. And I say, well, no, that's essential to the plot, or it's a reflection of modern society and the way we speak, or and you know, oh, well, I don't like that, this bad thing happened in your book. Well, bad things happen in life. So you have to stick to your own sort of recipe of what you think is a good book. Write for yourself. And hopefully there's a few people out there that feel the same way, and they will go and buy your books. But trying to write for everyone else, never going to work. You will never sell a copy.
No, never. And also, I mean, you're very well entrenched in the world of blockchain, and that's going to be a game changer for artists as well, as far as selling things. So tell us a bit more about that, Mac.
Well, Greta and I know you know Greta. A lot of people watching this won't necessarily know who she is. She's my fiance and partner, but business partner also, and we run Think IP. And that's all based around intellectual property. We love the creative side, but we also teamed up with a new cryptocurrency launching soon called love.io. And within that world, we've been to many events also with yourself, to blockchain events and things like this. And the reason we've been attending those, even though we're not Deep Space Nine techies, is the effect that blockchain can have on all aspects of life, but for us, mainly creativity. It's incredibly powerful, and where you can go with blockchain is limitless, I believe. And one of the things that attracted me was people that were promoting and selling books as NFTs. I'm not going to go into what NFTs are here. People either know what they are or not. But what that allows authors to do is to really take the publishing industry and turn it on its head. So at the moment, if HarperCollins rang me up tomorrow and said, we love your books, Mac, we'll start publishing them, they're going to want to take about 80% of the revenue. And that's after they've reimbursed themselves for what they invested in. So you're giving away 80% for a creative. That's a huge amount. So you're going to end up with 20%. Whereas publishing books through the NFT method, it's going to turn it on its head. And you can probably make more than 80% yourself as the creative. It's more like 90%, 95%. I was talking to a book company the other day that do this via NFTs, and they would take 5%. Well, that's more like it for a creative. They put in, you know, it could be 2 years of work writing a book or something. So for me, the blockchain side of it is about empowering creatives. I mean, there's so many aspects to blockchain in the whole world with finance and business, but for me, it's the creative side. And so anything that can empower creative people is hugely important, whether it's sculptors, poets, writers, photographers, artists, fine artists, whatever. For them to be able to get paid more for their creativity, I think that's got to be a good thing. The world needs more creativity, not less. And so just briefly, this cryptocurrency that we're involved with as ambassadors, which is called love.io, that's about rewarding creatives for their creativity and being able to donate and microtip and things like this. And we believe in it so much that we put our names to it as ambassadors. So it works hand in hand. It brings in the newer technologies with creativity, marry them together. I'm a happy man. Love it.
Fantastic. So what would you say to someone that doesn't know anything about blockchain or this technology? How would you simplify the general process to them?
I'd tell them to talk to Greta.
A wise move, I think, but that's fantastic. Mac, it's been great speaking with you about your journey in the book. And how would people that want to find out more, how would they get hold of the book? Where will they find it?
It's now, I think now it's available for pre-order on Amazon as a written format, either an ebook or the traditional publishing, paperback and hardback. It will be available as an audiobook on Audible, and if not, you can look at Arena Scripts, which is my agent in Sweden that's producing all the audiobooks. So the main one is Amazon.
Fantastic. Well, we'll put some links below this video. I definitely recommend you finding out more. And thanks so much for joining me today, Mac.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you very much indeed, mate. Pleasure.